Hi everyone, glad to have you joining us. Today, we introduce rotary wing operations in professional aviation. Yes, you understood correctly. From today, we will also start flying with helicopters. This presentation is necessary because the helicopter has similarities with the airplane, but also many differences in the type of operations and procedures, which, if not known, can pose a risk to safety of all airport users. The procedures that will be illustrated in the next slides are the result of the effort made by professional aviation in order to consider the needs connected to the new type of operations that the helicopter entails, the flight safety in a general sense, and then specifically to mitigate the main conflict scenarios that can be generated between planes and helicopters. All this is made possible thanks to the sharing of procedures, the knowledge and use of the same, and the correct use of the phraseology that will be explained. Professional aviation, well before purchasing the first helicopter, analyzed all the possible critical issues that could arise in everyday operations. This study, called Management of Change Analysis, highlighted the need to establish a narrower traffic circuit for helicopters. This is due to the fact that the gliding efficiency of a helicopter, in the event of engine failure, is very low, and therefore the need to be able to reach a safe landing area within the airport grounds is a priority. Furthermore, the preliminary analysis highlighted the need to implement procedures aimed at harmonizing and integrating the activity of aircraft and helicopters, mitigate all possible safety risks to an acceptable level, and enhance situational awareness level of all pilots operating at the airport. Let's start talking about the runway usage. Helicopters during training activities will use mainly the grass runway. This to not interfere with fixed-wing air operations. Only certain maneuvers, like the skidding landing, will be performed on the paved runway. The helicopter pilot will always communicate via radio whether he will use the grass runway or the paved runway. Touchdown points are abeam the respective runway threshold and on the grass strip. The traffic pattern will be on the same side. Let's start with the traffic pattern for runway 03. The helicopter traffic circuit will be on the same side as that followed by fixed-wing aircraft. The only two differences are that it will be narrower and the circuit altitude will be 700 feet AGL. Only in case of autorotation the altitude will be 1,000 feet. The first turn after takeoff will be performed at 350 feet AGL. Consider that this altitude will be normally reached when the helicopter is overflying the grass threshold for runway 21. As you can see from the image, when runway 03 is in use, the downwind passes slightly outside the first white road parallel to the runway. Airspeed on downwind will be 60 knots. It's important to note that when a fixed-wing aircraft and a helicopter are simultaneously on downwind, the fixed-wing aircraft will look for the helicopter on his left side and below his altitude. When runway 21 is in use, the traffic pattern is again on the left side and on the same side of other fixed-wing aircraft. Also in this case, look left and below if you are simultaneously on downwind with an helicopter. As a reference, the helicopter will turn on base when overflying a rounded building along Via Sabinara. We identified two conflict areas respectively extending on the runway's extended centerlines. In these areas, there is an increased risk of air prox. In order to mitigate this risk, whenever a fixed-wing aircraft has reported the base leg, the helicopter will maintain the downwind. However, pay particular attention and look out for traffic when on final. Now we give you some information about the radio phraseology. Helicopter pilots will use standard radio calls as outlined in our flight operations manual. In addition, we'll use the suffix copter after the position reports. This in order to inform that the helicopter traffic pattern is engaged. Grass or paved runway usage will be always stated by the helicopter pilot. In case of doubt regarding the intention of others' traffic, don't hesitate to ask clarification on the radio. The autorotation is a maneuver to be performed by helicopter pilots in case of engine failure. Is really similar to the engine failure maneuver performed by fixed-wing aircraft. During an autorotation simulated maneuver, the main rotor will be kept in rotation by the airflow coming from below the rotor. Main rotor rotation will allow helicopter controllability during the gliding descent. Helicopter efficiency is really low in case of engine failure. This means that the descent will be very steep and will take a short time. Auto-rotation maneuver will be practiced during training activities from different position on downwind. Helicopter instructors will announce on the radio their intention to perform this maneuver well in advance. The auto-rotation will be carried out on the grass runway unless otherwise communicated by the instructor. The maneuver will end against the wind, approximately with the wind being within 4 to 5 deg to the left or right of the helicopter's longitudinal axis. Therefore, it will not necessarily end exactly aligned with the runway. In case of strong wind, the auto-rotation will be carried out only if there is no other traffic on the circuit, and will be conducted in such a way as to avoid flying over buildings and people. Now let's have a look to some ground operations. At the start of operations in the morning, our helicopter will be prepared on the first helipad on the east apron. From this position, it will be towed to the main helipad. The first flight of the day will start from the main helipad with an air taxi to the grass runway, from which it will take off in direction 03 or 21. Before the air taxi, the helicopter pilot will announce the intention to the radio. Pay attention to the fact that during this maneuver, the helicopter will cross both the taxiway and the paved runway. Air taxi on the main taxiway Tango is prohibited to helicopters when there are aircraft parked on the parking stands. This to avoid downwash damage. Landing operation will terminate over the landing spot, positioned abeam the runway thresholds. From those spots, the helicopter will air taxi along the grass runway until a point from which it will cross the paved runway and the taxiway. Final landing will be performed on the grass area in front of the fuel pump. Here, the helicopter can refuel if needed and will be ready for the next flight. In order to allow the practice of the maneuvers foreseen by the training syllabus, 2 maneuver squares will be positioned in correspondence with the runway 03 threshold and the north windsock. These squares will be outside the grass runway and 10 by 10 meters in size. When the helicopter is maneuvering on the squares, it will be considered outside the circuit and will not interfere with the operations of fixed-wing aircraft. We have reached the end of this short presentation regarding the main procedures used in Ozzano by our helicopters. Everything you have read and listened to is the result of careful analysis by our instructors and post holders and the experience gained in the field. This is not to say that there is nothing to change. At Professional Aviation, we are always attentive to improvement. So if you have any questions or suggestions, do not hesitate to contact us.